last week, we continued looking at what God has to say about the importance and power of our words. Took that checklist, are my words in love, in truth, in grace, in His name, for His glory, and added, why am I about to say what I'm about to say? What is the motive of my heart, the hope of my heart? And just before we open our mouths, take our words against those things. And then we continue to look at these words, and one of the things I felt was very strong last week was that we spent multiple weeks talking about the power of our words to affect other people. And the reverse, of course, is true, because we're not immune, is the power of other people's words have to affect us, and how careful we have to be with who we surround ourselves with, who we listen to, what those words are. Are they words of faith and hope and encouragement? Words that build us up, words that remind us how great our God is, or are we feeding on, words of negativity and hopelessness and the world's definitions of possible and impossible and likely and unlikely, and those words that we listen to constantly are going to have effect on us. And we talked about how, even in nature we see some things change very quickly and some change slowly, and our words are very similar. That sometimes we'll see an immediate impact of our words, and other times we may not. And the danger is getting casual with our words when we aren't seeing that they're making a big thing. We don't really that careful, because I'm not really seeing anything happen. So I can just kind of be casual. But that word may take effect a year from now or down the road. Rich?
There's something I'd like to share that you just inspired memory, and I have.
Okay.
I saw a little talk once about having God's love in your heart and what's inside of you when you're under pressure, when push comes to shove and you're being squeezed by something. And the analogy he gave was, what do you get when you squeeze an orange? You get orange juice. Why do you get orange juice? Because that's what's inside. If God's love is in your heart, you're squeezed, God's love will come out. If anger and hate is in your heart and you're under pressure and squeezed in a situation, what comes out? Anger. So if God's love is in your heart, you're confronted. Hopefully you can respond with God's love. Someone comes at you in anger, you can come back at them in anger, or you can come back with, I will pray for you. God bless you.
Thank you, Rich. I've heard that same example with, how do you know what a sponge absorbs? You squeeze it and see what comes out. And it's the same thing with men. When we're under pressure, we get to see what's in us. And unfortunately, probably more often than any of us would like, it's not always what we wish was there. But then we can either let the devil put condemnation on that, or we can use that as the Holy Spirit saying, all right, we've got something to work on here. And how do we change this? So our words do have this effect, and just because I don't see any harm from my word happening right now, I can't get casual, because those words are not void. God has given me His life in me. He says His words do not return void. We got to be careful here. And likewise, like Kathy pointed out a couple weeks back, I may not see any good coming from my words, but keep speaking, because those words will have an effect too. And so then we looked at some different verses about the power of our words, about the power of them to create or change the spiritual environment, and it makes sense. From His words alone, God spoke and created everything we see. From nothing, He created out of nothing. He called forth into existence with His words, and He is in us. We looked at how it said in 1 Peter that those who desire to love life and see good days must be guarding our tongues. Verses about people that conceal evil hearts with sort of dripping words. And we ended last week with the wise man will weigh his words before he speaks. He will measure his words. He will, be careful Because again, once the match is put to the grass, it's, and we think about it. I went and talked last week, a couple weeks back, the Bible uses that example of the tongue as a match. You look at this red flag warning we're under right now, and they're talking about dry lightning striking, the coastal mountains up from here north, far north. And one thing they're saying is, you may not notice for a couple days. You may not notice until the humidity drops, the cloud cover leaves, and then that smolder in that tree that was just dropping ash on stone ground, or a few leaves, it may be 2-3 days before you actually see a manifestation of a lightning strike. And, that's the warning. And it's the same with, our words. We have to be careful. And so, I want to do, I guess, what I would call a case study this morning. I want to drop into an event that I return to many times a year. And this is that moment when the Israelites arrived at the Jordan. The spies came back and gave their report. This is one of the richest events, I believe, in the Bible. It gives us tremendous insight into how God sees faith into the hearts of people, faith versus fear, God's faithfulness, pictures of the Christian life, pictures, and God actually talks extensively about this moment and this moment leading up to it, this time in Hebrews. And so, but I want to talk this morning, I want to look at it in the context of words that are spoken and the power of those words. So, if you could bring up Numbers 13, 25 to 29, please. At the end of 40 days, the spies returned from spying out the land, and they came to Moses and Aaron, to all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. Remember, they were bringing back huge fruit. They were bringing back amazing evidences of the richness of this land, the blessing. This was the promised land that God had told generations before. This is the land I will give you to my people. And I think a lot of people, because we talk about heaven as the promised land, assume this is a picture of heaven. I believe this is a picture of the life available to the Christian. And the reason I say that is because there were still enemies that they had to contend with in that land. There was still temptation in that land, and that won't exist in heaven. Now, I'm not saying there's not also in this land a secondary picture of heaven, but I really believe this is a picture of the Christian life, and that many Christians will never cross that river. They will be saved, but never experience the victory and the fruit that the Holy Spirit promises us when it is living in our life and we are living fully in faith. They told him, the spies, we came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Next, please. The Lord spoke, however, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. Besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there, the Amalekites, and they start listing all the enemies, dwell in the land of the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the hill country, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. So we got into this land, and yeah, it rocks. I mean, it is amazing. But there's like giants in the land, and there's those dudes live there, and they live there, and they live there, and okay.
Like the Crips, the Bloods, and the MS-13.
First thing you have to know, and this is where it gets really, I think, personal for us. God told him to send the spies. Next one, please. Go back to Numbers 13, 1 and 2. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the people of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a chief among them. Is where you get your 12, one from each tribe. Okay? This is really, really important. God wanted them to know what they were facing. I think sometimes we feel like we can only speak words of hope and faith if we're kind of ignorant, or if we do speak them, that's what people think. Well, you're just denying the truth. You're just ignorant. You just don't know what's going on. You just are a blind follower. You just whatever. You know? If you really knew what's going on, if you really knew what the risks were, if you really knew what you face, you know, fill in the blanks, then. But God says, I want you to really know. I want you to make a choice. I'm not going to blindly lead and then go, look what you got us into, God. Remember the Israelites, over and over. They get to a spot, there's no food. Oh, if only we'd stayed back in Egypt, you know. Fine, here's your quail, here's your man. Oh, there's no water, if only we'd stayed back. Fine, here's water out of a rock. God said, it ain't happening now. Okay? None of this, you led me in, if only. No. Here's what you're going to face. This is the obstacle. You make the choice. You have that. You have what the land offers. You have my promises. What's your decision going to be? And so that is really, really important for us to know, because reality includes God. When we speak words of faith and are accused of being ignorant at times, truth deniers, not connected to reality, or maybe even you're trying to speak words of faith, but that little whisper is saying, you're just denying reality, you're just trying to, you're not really grounded in reality, you're not really dealing with what's really at work here. I've heard that myself when I'm trying to be faith-filled, but that little whisper that says, yeah, but this is what's really happening, Eric. But the truth is, it is the ones who leave God out of the picture that are denying reality. They are the ones that are not facing what is the real situation. Yes, all that physical stuff is true, but there is something that you can't see. And that is the God who spoke and from his breath came forth stars, who lives within you, Christian, and has said, I will never leave you or forsake you. Okay, so that is the full picture of reality. And God's presence in something is a key, essential part of reality. Back in Exodus 33, so the people are doing all this stuff, and God basically says to Moses about going to the land I swore to Abraham, and he says, I'll send an angel before you, and I will drive out remember that list, the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up among you, lest I consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people. He's like, I promised it to you, and I'll give it to you, but I'll send an angel to do it. I'm not going with you. You are a stiff-necked people. Then Moses, in verse 12 of Exodus 33, he said to the Lord, see, you say to me, bring up the people, and he starts pleading. If I have found favor in your sight, please show me your ways. And God said, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. And then Moses, bring up 15 to 17, please. Moses said to him, okay, this is amazing. If your presence will not go with me, don't bring us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not in your going with us, so that we are distinct, I and your people, from every other people on the face of the earth? Isn't that what makes us unique, is that we have God with us? Right, Christian? Okay? The Lord said to Moses, this very thing that you have spoken I will do, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. So this was the promise. I will, even though I don't want to be around you guys, I'll go with you. Okay? I will go with you into the land. And that was the promise when they stood on the bank that makes all the difference in the world. That is reality. Yes, there's the Jebusites and the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and all them and everything else, and the descendants of Anak and the giants and the fortified cities. Yes, all that is real, but there is something else that is even of greater importance, and that is that God promised Moses, I'll go with you. That's reality. And to leave that out of the question and say, we're not dealing with your pie in the sky, God in the air thing, we're dealing with what's in front of us. You can deny reality all you want. This is what we're facing. The reality is they are the ones denying reality. Because God is more real. Everything on this earth and in all this universe will fade away one day, but God never will. And so that is, and to reinforce this, here's the contrast, is that skipping ahead, the people refuse, they want to stone Joshua and Caleb and you know, whatever, and Moses says, how long will these people despise me, not believe in me, despite all I've done? And he says they're going to wander in the wilderness, yada yada. The people hear this, and the people mourned greatly, because this is what God said. And they rose up early in the morning and went up to the heights, and I'm in Numbers 14. I'll tell you when to bring it up, Carolyn. They rose early in the morning, went up to the heights, saying, here we are. We'll go up to the place that the Lord has promised, for we have sinned. So, okay, all right, God just like rebuked us. Oh no, this is not good. Okay, we're going to go take the land. All right, we're going to go. We're going to do it now. Verses 41, 42. Moses said, why now are you transgressing the command of the Lord when that will not succeed? Do not go up, for the Lord is not among you, lest you be struck down before your enemies. Wait. Same mission. Take the same land, same river, or maybe a day apart. What's the difference? Why are they going to fail? The Lord will not be among you. It's too late. So what's the difference? What is the difference? And then it goes on to talk about how they did it anyway and got basically kicked out of the land with their tail between their legs. But what is the only difference? God wasn't with them. So, if God with them means they get the richness of the land and victory, and God not with them means the world, the enemies of the land, whoop them, then I would say whether or not God is with us is a pretty important element when we look at situations. What are you? Okay? So, reality includes, is God with us in this or not? And we've got to remember that. It made all the difference in the world. And leaving that out is to be the one who is denying reality. Faith is boldness. Faith is authority. It comes from that confidence in what we cannot see, but we know to be real. That is where we can speak with confidence, because we speak in faith. We have an assurance and a confidence. Though I cannot see it, God has said it, and it is true. And so we live in that, and we speak from that. You know, remember that awesome story I love to talk about with Elisha and his servant, you know, and they wake up in the chariots and armies of all around them from Syria and everything, and he's like, we're dead, and Elisha's like, nah, those who are with us are more than those who are with them, and the servant's like, huh? You know, like, Lord, open his eyes. You know, and I always like to say, and you guys can finish my sentence, his eyes are probably this open, this big. So I go, what are you talking about? He's like, open these eyes. And suddenly he saw in the spiritual realm, and he saw the armies of heaven and chariots of fire surrounding them. To leave God out of it is to be the denier of reality and the one who is ignorant and the one who is operating with only half the facts. So you got this situation. The Israelites are at the river, the promised land is across it, the report has come in that is there of its bountiful fruit and its formidable occupants. So they've got a picture of what they face and what is possible. Now you know the people of the land aren't just going to lay down, right? They're not just going to say, okay, here, you can have it. No, they're going to fight. You know that. You know that this is not going to be easy. And this is something that we as Christians have to realize. God is not afraid of us knowing the obstacles, and God gives us promises about the outcomes. But that does not mean that we're not going to have a hard road between A and B. It does not mean we don't have to work. It doesn't mean there's not going to be battles, spiritual wars. But we can go forward in confidence when we go forward in His will and with His presence. So you have this point, you've got God that has traveled with you all the way up to this point in a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. You've watched water come out of a rock. You've watched the land be covered with meat. You've watched and bread from heaven. You've watched the Red Sea part and swallow up the greatest army in the world. And there you stand. Yeah, this land rocks. This is awesome. But it's very heavily fortified and defended. Now listen to the words. This is what this is all about. So, we told them, they came to the land, it flows with milk and honey, here's its fruit. People of the land are strong, here's all the descendants. Caleb quieted, this is verse 30, the people before Moses and said, and you don't have these, Carolyn, let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it. A word of faith, right? A word of encouragement, a word of truth. Okay, yeah, those dudes are big and bad. Let's go. We can do this. Then the men who had gone up with him said, we're not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are. So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land they had spied out, saying, this land through which we've gone to spy out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from Nephilim, the giants, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers. And so we seemed to them. So these are the descendants of giants. These people are huge. It's like, right? So Caleb, we can do this. We got this. The other 10, no, we don't. They're big. We're done. Both believers, right? Both believe God exists. All right? Then the congregation laid a loud cry, and the people wept that night. Who were they listening to? Over here, right? All the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said, does this start to sound familiar? Oh, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to one another, let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt. Okay? Words of faith, words of negativity. People respond to this one. All right? Moses and Aaron fall on their face before the congregation, the people of Israel. Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes and said to the congregation, the people of Israel, better stand over here, the land which we passed through to spy it out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, He will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread to us. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. All right? So I've just been informed I got cut off when I went over here. All right. Sorry about that. So
that's the dark side, isn't it?
the dark side, yeah. Words of faith. These words don't mean there's no work involved. Joshua and Caleb aren't saying, look, just put your foot out over the river and poof, everyone's going to disappear and the land will be yours. No. They know there's work involved, but they're saying we can do it. If the Lord delights in us, we can do this. So what was the response of the people? Then all the congregation said to stone them with stones. think it's easier to listen to negative words than words of faith. Because negative words deal with what we perceive as reality, and words of faith require us to trust. They stretch us. They require us to be out of control. Words of fear say, this is my resources, this is what I got, this is what I can do, and this is what I can't. Words of faith say, but there's something bigger that you don't control that you need to trust. And you need to step out in faith, which means to let go of your control, and that's scary. It means you need to step into that place where you are not controlling it. The great lie being is over here, I think I'm controlling things when I never was anyway. I'm not in control any more here than I am over here. Over here, I just think I am. Over here, I have to trust. I have to stretch. So the people are in God's, Joshua and Caleb saying, we're in God's will, facing real world obstacles, but we have God's promises and presence. But then came the words of faithlessness. And Hebrews talks a lot about this. God will say to them, verses 11 and 12, you have that. How long, nope, you were there. How long will this people despise me? And how long will they not believe in me? We've talked about this before. This is the belief that says, I trust in you, I believe in you. Not that you exist, but your character, your nature, your promises. In spite of all the signs I've done among them, the stuff I just recapped and more. I will strike them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make of you a nation greater and mightier than them. I'm going to wipe them out, Moses. And this is when Moses is like, no, intercede, don't, please don't. And this is when the people hear this, and like, we're dead, we're going to go invade anyway. And then, it ends really bad. Hebrews talks about this, and Carol, I'm going to skip all those verses, I don't have time. But if you go to Hebrews 3 and 4, it talks extensively about this passage. And it talks about their unbelief, which again is not that God exists, their unbelief in God's faithfulness. It talks about their disobedience, because if we're not in faith, we're in sin. So we are in disobedience to God. We are not trusting Him. We are rebelling against Him when we step out of faith. And without faith, it is impossible to please God. And we see that. And here's the thing that, Marianne had pointed this out to me as I was sharing this story with our family earlier this week. And she said, those words change the course of the nation and the world. 12 people with mouths. The words they chose to speak and what the people chose to listen to affected an entire nation's future. An entire generation hung in the balance in the mouths of those 12 men. An entire generation stood on the brink of stepping into the promised inheritance of God, to the fullness of abundance and victory, because they chose to listen to words of faithlessness and fear. The entire generation wandered in the wilderness for 40 years and missed it. The entire outcome of the world. You think it's not just them. What about the whole generations of land that had 40 more years to grow stronger and entrenched in the enemies? Think about the course of the earth. Think about Egypt, who had just, what strong God these people have. But then when they had a chance to say, yes, they even got that whole land. Instead it's like, yeah, but they're just wandering in the desert. 10 years later, what are they doing now? They're still wandering out there somewhere. I thought their God was really big. The witness, everything affected by that. Abigail got into this thing that's really cool. She started looking up what they call shower expressions. These things they say, they claim you think about in the shower while you're, and for me it was coffee at midnight in high school or college with friends, but these wild thoughts, the one I used to love is if you're flying at the speed of light and you hold a mirror out in front of your face, will you see your reflection or not? That's the kind of stuff I lay there and kind of think about, we talk about, or all these things, But one of the ones she found that really spoke to me deeply about this says, when we think about traveling, first let me ask, who's seen Back to the Future? Pretty much almost everyone, almost. Okay. The occupation, the preoccupation of that, you travel back in time and you do one thing and you change the whole outcome of everything, right? Listen to this. When we think about traveling back in time, we are afraid of actions that might have major impact on the present, but we refuse to believe that our actions in the present can have major impact on our future. If I could travel back to 1950 and say one thing differently and change the entire future of my family, my generations, a city, and a nation, why can't the words I speak at this moment change the entire future of a nation, a people, a generation? We cannot be casual with them. When the words of fear were spoken, and here's the other point that Marianne had made that really spoke to me in the context of this, the words of fear and faithlessness were spoken, and Joshua and Caleb had to make a courageous decision. Are we going to speak words against it? Are we going to stand up with words of faith in the face of a people that might stone us for this choice? Our brothers, our brethren, our fellow believers. When words of negativity and faithlessness that do not bring glory to God and leave God out of the picture are being spoken and feeding the souls of our brethren, our brothers and sisters, be it in person or on social media or whatever, are we going to have the courage to offer a true reality, something different? Are we going to have the courage, though everyone may hate to hear it, to speak words of faith and life and hope? Remember, this is not blind. Please get this. If you get nothing else, I'm not talking about blind faith, wishful thinking, name it, claim it, okay? This is not what I'm saying. I am talking about when you know you're in His will and you know He is with you. What are your words going to be? Think about it when Peter was in the boat and the storm and the wind and the waves are tossing all about. What did he not ask? He did not say, God, still the sea. He said, is it you, God? And if it's you, tell me to come. I need to know it's you, God, and I need to know I'm in your will. And that's all I need, and I'll walk on water. And when did he sink? When he put his eyes back on the circumstances. Because whatever we focus our attention on is what will be biggest in our heart, and that will be what starts to come out of our mouth. What's biggest in our heart and minds and our meditations is going to be what's coming out of our mouth. Unless we're those people I talked about last week that just drippy, sappy, put all your good stuff over a really dark heart, deceiving and stuff. But if we're just being honest, the words that are going to be coming out are the reflection of our meditations of our heart and what's biggest in our heart at the time. I guarantee you Peter was aware of the wind and waves and how deep the ocean was. He probably fished that place his entire life. He probably knew the number. He probably lost many friends in similar storms. So he didn't deny reality. He wasn't ignoring reality. There was just something that was bigger to him. Is it you, God? And do you want me to come? That's all I need to know. It's me, Peter. Come. Walked on water. That is cool. But like I said before, I really feel like it's easier to listen to words of fear than faith. One, they confirm what I'm already feeling anyway, right? I'm afraid, I'm nervous, I'm scared, and so those words just kind of confirm that. And we all like to be affirmed, right? We all like to think we're right, we're thinking of things accurately. It's hard to live in faith because faith feels like you're not in control. And we're not. Exactly. But we like to think we are. We like to think that if we can hold on to it tight enough, we can control it. And we're not. But if you take nothing else out of this, God is not afraid of us knowing what we face. What are you facing right now? Good grief. I mean, set aside any individual personal issues. Just look at our fires, our COVID, our nation, our just whatever, but then get personal. What are you facing right now? What are your personal fears? What are your personal, okay? God wants you to know all that. He's not afraid of you knowing that. He's not saying pretend those things aren't real. Is it you, God? What do you want me to do? Okay. I will trust. I will trust you when the outcome comes out exactly the way I hoped, and I will trust you when it doesn't, because I trust you as bigger than this. And then will we speak those words. And it takes courage to speak words of faith. And you get worn down if you're not being fed with faith, if you're not being fed with Scripture, if you're not being surrounded with people that are fired up and filled with faith. It wears you down, it nicks you and bleeds you until you just kind of become yourself, negative, grumbling, complaining, hopeless, just whatever. Been there, done that too many times. Will we choose to praise? Will we choose to thank? Will we choose to rejoice? Will we choose to include God in every picture and to speak words that reflect it? The entire future depends upon our decision. Father, I thank you. I thank you for this case study you've given us of the power of the words that we choose to speak and the power of the words we choose to listen to. May we be a people of courageous faith, not just running off following our own wills, but knowing we are in your will, knowing you are with us. Be people who speak words of faith and hope and life. Not deniers of reality, but those who truly embrace the real reality, which is you in everything. I ask your blessing, your favor, your protection, your hand over this precious fellowship, our family, here, and those watching on the videos. I ask you just to pour out, Father, over us. And I thank you so much. And I ask this in Jesus' name.